Hi, I'm Jay Goldman. You're watching Mr. Mobile on Butterscotch.com. Thanks for tuning in. Today, a look at the HTC Dream. If you are in the US and you have a T-Mobile phone, T-Mobile, that is the long form, you may be thinking this phone looks awfully familiar but wasn't called a Dream. That's because in the US it was called a G1, and it was the first commercially available Android phone, Android being Google's operating system for phones. Now, it's not actually Google's, they launched it, but it's now the Open Handset Alliance, which includes a bunch of different companies, HTC being one of them. And the Dream was the first phone that was available on the market that ran Android as its operating system. The operating system on the phone works sort of the same way as iPhone's iPhone software or BlackBerry's operating system, but the difference with Google is that the operating system is open source, and so you're going to see a lot of devices coming to the market which are Android phones. The difference is the hardware, and it is actually a pretty critical difference. So if you're thinking about buying an Android phone, and that's not a bad idea, it's actually a really nice operating system. They've thought through a lot of things that make it a really smooth experience. Pay special attention to the hardware, because that's what actually differentiates all the different phones that, and other devices that are going to be running Android on the market. So let's take a look at this device specifically. The HTC Dream is both a touchscreen on the screen up here and a flip phone that has full keyboard in it. There isn't actually an on-screen keyboard, so if you hit a text field and you want to type something in, you do actually have to pop the phone open, which is a little bit annoying, and it starts to drag once you start to get between doing a lot of things that are on the touchscreen, like pulling it out of your pocket, and places where you need to type. But on the whole, Android is really, really well thought out as a touchscreen experience. You get something that's much closer to an iPhone and a lot less like something like a BlackBerry Storm, where the touchscreen experience never really felt like it was fully integrated into the phone. So Android gets a thumbs up on the touchscreen experience, and the Dream has done a really nice job of implementing that. This phone doesn't have multi-touch capability, something that you've seen on the iPhone, so you don't have the ability to do the kind of cool stuff like rotate photos. It is apparently built into actually both the hardware and the software, so it may become enabled at some future point in a later revision of the Dream, but it's not available in this particular version. One of the things I really don't like about this phone is the USB port on the bottom. Now, it is actually a standard USB port, and the phone does come with a charger that plugs into there. The problem is it's actually the only port on this phone, which means that the headphones actually plug into the USB port as well, which means you can pretty much only ever use the headphones that came with the phone. That's a real drag if you use this as a music player and you wanted to go out and invest a little bit more money in a pair of headphones that sounded better. They're not going to work on this because it doesn't have a 3.5 headphone jack on it anywhere. Newer HTC devices are starting to. I think they've got the message that people really don't like being tied into using a single headset. Apple certainly got that message when they had the original iPhone, which had a longer headset jack. Wasn't popular. They took it out in a later version. HTC is doing the same. On the back, you'll see a 3.2 megapixel camera, does full motion capture, so you get video, also does still photos, and Android being a great web-enabled OS, you can do cool things like upload them directly to your favorite photo and video sharing websites from the handset itself, so that's a really handy feature. This is a 3G handset, so you get full speed data connection, so it's nice and fast when you are doing things like uploading it. The web browser on here runs on WebKit, which is the same browser core that Apple uses in Safari. So you get a lot of really good rendering for mobile experience, not like some of the older browsers that you might have come to know and hate on your mobile device. So browsing on here is pretty great. Not quite the same thing as on an iPhone because you don't have the multi-touch, so you can't do things like zoom in and out, but you can sort of tap to zoom in, and you can navigate around using the little roller ball. The ball will actually be quite familiar if you have a BlackBerry, one of the newer ones anyway, that has a roller ball on it. It gives you full sort of motion back and forth, and you can click to select things. And that actually works in places where you might otherwise have to tap. So that does sort of speed things up, and you can use it in either the portrait or landscape modes with the keyboard out. Final note on the Dream, and I think this is probably not true of some of the newer HTC hardware. This phone has really bad build quality. It's really sort of creaky. When you're using it, you can actually feel the different parts of the phone moving against each other. And one of the things that I noticed sort of in passing early on when I started playing with the phone is that when you pop the screen open, it's actually not quite straight. It doesn't line up with the keyboard. That feels like a very small thing at first, but the longer you use the phone, the more you notice it. And it actually sort of gets to the point where you're kind of wedging the left side of the screen up with your hand while you're typing so that it actually does line up. I think it's because they didn't put a rail down the side here to secure the screen, so you can make it straight. but it sort of feels cheap when you're using it, and it does get a bit annoying. If you're thinking about buying an Android phone, you might want to take a look at some of the other ones. HTC has another phone on the market right now called the Magic, which is a full touchscreen experience, so it doesn't have a hinge and a piece that opens. They are both $150 from most carriers, so you might want to take a look at the Magic as opposed to the Dream, unless you're really, really tied to the keyboard. I'm Jay Goldman. This has been Mr. Mobile. Thanks for watching. Check out some past episodes on butterscotch.com, and we'll see you next time. This episode brought to you by our friends at Hover, the easiest way to buy domain names and do more with them. Get 25% off today by visiting hover.com/MrMobile.